A car company says it sells cars. A coffee chain says it sells coffee. A tech startup says it sells software. But if that were true, some of the most valuable companies in the world would never have existed, because many of them spent years selling products that barely made money or lost money entirely. So what were people actually paying for? The answer reveals a hidden rule of the modern economy. The most valuable thing a company can sell isn't a product. It's a future. Most people believe business follows a simple rule. Sell something for more than it costs to make. If you make money, you succeed. If you lose money, you fail. That logic works for a coffee shop, a restaurant, or a small family business. But then you look at some of the biggest companies in the modern economy. Ride-sharing companies lost billions. Food delivery platforms burned cash for years. Some electric vehicle manufacturers sold products with little profit or no profit at all. Yet investors kept investing. Valuations kept rising. Founders became billionaires. Instead of collapsing, these companies became even more powerful. So what's really happening? How can a company become more valuable while making less money? The answer is surprisingly simple. Many of these companies were never trying to maximize profit in the first place. The mistake most people make is assuming these companies are selling products. They're not. At least, not in the way we usually think. A car company may appear to sell cars. A delivery platform may appear to sell convenience. A tech startup may appear to sell software. But those products are often serving a different purpose. They are proof that the company can attract customers, proof that it can grow, proof that it might one day dominate an entire market. And in the modern financial system, that possibility can be worth far more than today's profit. This is where the illusion begins. Because what investors are often buying is not the product itself. They're buying a story about the future. And the more believable that story becomes, the more valuable the company appears to be. At Mind Over System, we're less interested in what people buy and more interested in why they buy it. Because behind every price, every investment, and every market trend, there's usually a system shaping the decision. Most people think business is about profit. Make more than you spend. Keep the difference. Simple. But many modern startups operate by a different rule. They care less about today's profit and more about tomorrow's potential. Because once investors start paying for the future, a company no longer needs to prove what it is. It only needs to convince people what it could become. This is why some companies can lose money for years and still attract investors. Because the product is not the destination. The product is evidence. Every new customer is evidence. Every new order is evidence. Every new market is evidence. When Xiaomi sells an electric vehicle at a loss, investors don't just see a car. They see proof that Xiaomi can enter one of the largest industries on earth. And sometimes, that proof is worth more than the profit itself. Once a story becomes believable, valuation takes over. A startup raises money. The higher valuation attracts attention. Attention attracts more investors. More investors push the valuation even higher. At this point, the company is no longer being measured only by what it has built. It's being measured by what people believe it can become. The stronger the belief, the higher the valuation. And that's where the illusion begins. Because belief can grow much faster than reality. This creates one of the strangest incentives in modern business. If spending money helps a company grow faster, then losing money may actually increase its valuation. That sounds irrational until you realize investors are not paying for today's results. They're paying for tomorrow's dominance. $1 billion in losses can look like a disaster, or it can look like an investment. The difference depends on what people believe happens next. Eventually, every story reaches a moment of truth. The question is simple. How does belief become real money? The answer is an exit, an IPO, an acquisition, a sale of shares. This is where early investors convert years of belief into actual wealth. The company may still be losing money, but the valuation has already done its job. Because in the world of pricing, value is not always created when money is earned. Sometimes, it's created when a story becomes valuable enough to sell. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's how the system often works. For years, Uber lost billions of dollars while expanding across the world. Yet, its valuation kept climbing because investors weren't focused on the present. They were focused on the possibility of controlling a global transportation network. WeWork followed a similar path. Its valuation once exploded to nearly $50 billion, driven largely by a story about reinventing the future of work. Then confidence disappeared, and so did most of the valuation. The buildings were still there. The offices were still there. What changed was belief. That's what makes valuations so powerful and so fragile. A factory can be measured. A product can be tested. But belief exists only as long as enough people agree on the same future. And when that future changes, billions of dollars can appear or disappear almost overnight. Imagine two empty pieces of land sitting side by side. Same size, same soil, same weather. Yet one is worth 3 times more than the other. Not because of what it is today, because of what people believe it could become. Someone heard a new highway might be built nearby. A large company is rumored to move into the area. A new shopping district is being planned. Nothing has happened yet. The land hasn't changed, but the price already has. Why? Because people are no longer paying for the land itself. They're paying for a future version of the land that exists only in their minds. This is the same mechanism that drives startup valuations, the same mechanism that drives stock prices, and sometimes the same mechanism that creates bubbles. The future is powerful because nobody can measure it. Nobody can prove it. Nobody can see it. All they can do is believe in it. And when enough people believe the same story, that story starts affecting real prices. In the danger isn't valuation. And when enough people believe the same story, that story starts affecting real prices in the present. The danger isn't valuation. The danger is forgetting what valuation actually measures. A valuation is not a fact. It's a belief about the future. Most of the time, that distinction doesn't matter. Until it does. Because once enough people believe the same story, the story starts feeling real. Expectations become assumptions. Assumptions become prices. And prices begin influencing reality itself. This is why bubbles are so difficult to recognize from the inside. People aren't buying assets. They're buying confidence. And confidence is strongest right before it's tested. When reality finally arrives, the question is rarely whether the story was completely wrong. The question is whether the story was worth the price people paid for it. Perhaps the biggest misunderstanding about value is that people assume it exists on its own. It doesn't. Value is always a relationship between reality and expectation. Reality determines what something is today. Expectation determines what people are willing to pay for tomorrow. That's why a company can be worth billions before it becomes profitable. That's why a piece of land can double in price before anything is built on it. And that's why markets spend so much time arguing about the future. Because the future is where value is negotiated. The product matters. The revenue matters. The fundamentals matter. But price is rarely a reflection of the present alone. More often, it's a reflection of the future people imagine. And in the end, the most expensive mistakes are rarely caused by bad assets. They're caused by expectations that were priced too highly. Understanding this illusion doesn't mean ignoring the future. It means remembering the difference between possibility and reality. Every investment contains a story. Every price contains an expectation. The question is whether that expectation is reasonable. The most disciplined investors aren't the ones who avoid stories. They're the ones who ask how much they're paying for them. Because a great story can still be a bad investment, and a strong future can still be overpriced. In a world driven by expectations, clarity becomes an advantage. Not the ability to predict the future, but the ability to recognize when the future has already been priced in. The next time you see a company worth billions without making a profit, don't just ask what it's selling. Ask what people believe. Because behind every valuation, every investment, and every price, there's a story about the future. Some of those stories will come true. Many won't. The challenge is knowing the difference. And in a world where belief can create billions in value, perhaps the most important question is this: what stories are you paying for today?